Well, it's Friday. It's my favorite day of the week, probably your favorite day of the week as well. Maybe not for the same reason, although probably for some of the same reasons, but certainly one of my favorite reasons for it being my favorite day of the week is that we get to do the Morning Pitt Mailbag, where we take your questions about Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting, or anything else on your mind, and we answer them right here in the Morning Pitt Mailbag every Friday. I always look forward to it. It's almost like a day off for me because I don't have to think of the topics. I don't have to come up with things to talk about. I don't have to prepare a hardcore sports talk open like I did for yesterday's Morning Pitt. I hope you enjoyed that. That was fun to do. I was cracking myself up doing that. I don't know if you enjoyed it, but I thought it was funny. But I don't have to think of those kinds of things. I just let you guys pick the topics. You guys ask the questions, and then I answer as many as I can during our Morning Pitt episode here every Friday in the mailbag. So we got a lot of great questions about recruiting, about NIL, about coaching stuff, all kinds of things. So let's jump into it on the Morning Pitt Mailbag right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, Friday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's our mailbag edition, which we do every Friday. And, of course, it's part of our weekly Morning Pitt series. Monday through Friday, we have a Pitt talk show to get your day started with whatever the big topics of the day are. And when there aren't any big topics of the day, we find something to talk about anyway, like yesterday's discussion of whether Blake Hinson is on the Pitt's 21st century Mount Rushmore. And a lot of disagreement about that one, about whether he belongs, about who belongs. It's a good conversation. I didn't think everybody was going to agree. And I knew there would be a little bit of disagreement about it, but I looked forward to that. I welcomed it. You know what I mean? I wanted to hear what you guys had to say. And you guys had a lot of good comments on Twitter, on the message boards, and on the YouTube video. And so if you want to make sure you don't miss any of those videos, because we have the Morning Pitt video Monday through Friday. We have our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. We have post-game shows that we do after every road basketball game. We have video highlights from spring camp and press conferences and post-games, all kinds of stuff. All kinds of Pitt video content right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is the place to go if you want to stay up on all of our Pitt videos. And, of course, the place for all the Pitt coverage is Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, we cover it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards. So to give you an opportunity to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And if you want to be part of that conversation, if you want to be part of the best online Pitt community, the place to do it is right there, Panther-Lair.com. And that's where we take all the questions for the mailbag. If you're wondering, like, if you watch these Friday mailbag episodes and you're like, well, where do you get to ask a question? I want to ask a question. Well, the place to do it is on the message board. It's on the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. That's our premium football message board. We post a thread every week, and people ask questions. So a bunch of people ask questions over the course of the last few days, and then we answer as many as we can. So if you want to be a part of it, you got to be a part of the message board, Panther-Lair.com. Now let's start off here with Devil Dog 444. It says, how quickly do you think that the current NIL setup will transition to pay-to-play, or essentially having the players be university employees with actual contracts? The current situation just is so murky and unsustainable. You're absolutely right, and I've said something along those lines for a while now, that I think there is an expiration date on this current setup where the fans are being asked to pay the players, not the schools, not the conferences, not the people who are actually making money off the players, but the fans are being asked to pay the players. The fans are being asked to raise the money and make those donations to fund the NIL deals. And there was an article yesterday, I want to say I think it was in The Athletic or somewhere like that, talking about donor fatigue, which I think is a very real thing and very understandable, and something I've been talking about for a while that I anticipated. And not just at Pitt, but at schools all over the country, where you're asking fans every year, hey, give us $5,000, give us $10,000, give us $20,000 to the school for the scholarship fund and the locker rooms and the weight room and the capital projects and all this. And now on top of that, you've got another entity, not necessarily the school, saying, hey, give us $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, because we need to pay the players to actually win games. We need to pay to get the good players so the team can actually win games. And there's a little bit of fatigue with that. And I'm not, it's not hard to understand. It's not hard to figure out. And we've talked about this, that I think even at some of the places where you have really crazy fan bases, I'm thinking like SEC schools or like Texas A&M or Texas, places like that. And I know they're both in the SEC, but you get my point. Even schools like that, I think there is a cap on just how insane you can really get with it. That you're not going to be able to go to the well like this every year and get $5 million in NIL donations on top of the $5 million the athletic department's raising on its own in its capital fund projects or whatever they're doing. That could work for the first couple of years, but it wasn't going to work forever. You're not going to be able to sustain like that. And so, how long do I think the current NIL setup will last? How quickly do I think it will transition to pay to play? I mean, I can't really see this current setup lasting more than a couple of years, beyond like a couple of years from now, and maybe as little as a year or two, before they have some sort of system in place for revenue sharing where it's not, where NIL is not the only way for these players to get some kind of money. I think it has to be on the way. It has to be coming. And the player, it's just part of it. You're not going to eliminate the NIL side of things, but you can find ways. I think once you get into a revenue sharing system, you can find ways to curb and regulate the NIL stuff, which regulation is ultimately what's needed. Transparency and regulation, just to kind of get everything into a structured system that maybe will cut down on how much of a pay-to-play situation it really is right now. But to your question, how quickly do I think it'll happen? I think in the next couple of years. I think they have to figure out a system. I think that's the hardest part, is figuring out a system of how they would make it work, because there's a lot of ins and outs to it. Just talked to our good friend Joe Lanoski yesterday, and he was talking about, you start getting into things like taxable income, and nonprofit status, and as you move forward with some of these things, are you going to start taxing the value of the scholarship the players are getting? Do players end up losing money by going to college if they have to pay taxes on the scholarship and taxes on the money they're getting in revenue share? There's a lot of ins and outs. There's a lot, who are you negotiating with? Is it each school individually that you'll have a contract with? You have a contract with a conference. We have a contract with the NCAA or some new umbrella agency or organization that oversees the whole of, at least FBS, if not beyond. So there's a lot to figure out, but I think the next couple of years will be spent figuring it out, and we'll have some new system. Cosmo Kramer says, with NIL and the transfer portal's impact on recruiting and pushing some of the better recruiting coaches like Hafley, Partridge, and McClendon into the NFL, do you think we will begin to see programs de-emphasize looking for coaches that are great recruiters and prioritize instead other coaching skills like being a good evaluator or a coach that is a better instructor and can develop the talent being brought in? So really this is a question about, I take this more as a question about the structure of college football coaching staffs and maybe even basketball as well. And it's something, again, that I think we've talked about before, but I think it's a really interesting topic because there is movement afoot in the sport toward more of an NFL model with regards to, identifying targets, pursuing targets, and developing those targets. And you understand that everybody sort of overlaps to some extent, but we've seen college football programs move toward a model where they have a general manager, where, it used to be director of player personnel or whatever in college, but it's become more of a general manager. There's some schools, I think Texas Tech is one that, or maybe Texas Tech might be the only one, has taken away the whole offer process from the assistant coaches. And I think assistants would still have to sign off on an offer, but you can't even call them the recruiting department anymore. It's the evaluation department, the general manager department, that side, the personnel department is responsible for identifying talent, offering that talent, and recruiting that talent. And the assistant coaches really get involved down the road with the actual coaching. And again, I mean, nothing's ever completely separated like that. And I think, assistant coaches would still have involvement in recruiting, but a lot of that process has been shifted from the coaches, the actual full-time assistant coaches, over to the personnel department. And I think you could see more schools going that route. I think there's always going to be value in recruiting high school kids. It's not all going to be a game of transfers. I mean, transfers have to start somewhere, right? I mean, transfers have to go to one school at the beginning. And I think majority of, FBS football players are not going to transfer. And so the majority of the guys you are going to hold on to, and you're going to have them for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So there's still value in high school recruiting. There's still value in getting a good recruiter. There's still value in guys who have connections to schools and talent hotbeds. There's still value in all of that. But I think what the whole system looks like is changing. So, do they de-emphasize recruiters in favor of developers? I mean, I think to some extent that's been a priority for Pat Narduzzi for years, particularly on defense, is getting guys who can identify the type of players they want and develop those players. And I think they've done a great job of it. And they've had some pretty good recruiters on that staff as well, with Charlie Partridge, like you mentioned, or Corey Sanders. They've had good recruiters. I think to some extent, some of it will depend on which waters you usually swim in. If you make your living and fill your roster with 3-star guys, then development might be a more, identifying talent and developing that talent might be a more important quality and a more important trait than actually, the actual recruiting, the sales side of it, And so for a school like Pitt, it probably is important to have those developers and those coaches on staff. But you'd still like to have good recruiters. But I think the whole enterprise has changed in the last few years, and I think it's going to continue to change. We've seen Pitt's personnel department continue to grow. What it grows into, I think remains to be seen. But then you also see groups like NIL collectives having guys with the title of GM. So it's moving more toward the pro football model. It's moving more toward the NFL model. And we'll see where it ends up. Yard Hogs wants to know, what's your opinion on the new signing day change? Moving it up to the beginning of December, and in some years maybe even the end of November, seems like coaches will be stretched to their limits. Coaching for a possible championship game, trying to keep players from leaving for the portal, recruiting from the portal, and trying to get your high school recruits signed, etc. Yeah, so the rule change was made. Signing day now, instead of being the third Wednesday in December, is going to be the Wednesday before the conference championship games. The Wednesday before the conference championship games. And this is interesting. I'm still processing this, still kind of trying to understand it and understand the impact. I think when you think about the December recruiting calendar, right? Like, this is a major change to something that, those of us who follow recruiting and talk about recruiting and cover recruiting, we've always talked about and known about it. It's that December visit period where coaches can go on the road, they can visit recruits in their home, they can have those in-home visits, and they can have official visits. And some of that is, a lot of those in-home visits are securing your class and making sure the guys who are committed to you end up signing with you. A decent amount of that is going out and landing new guys, trying to find new guys who can join your class. And then you're always kind of keeping an eye out on which guys you might lose from your class. And back in the day, more 5 or more years ago, it was more. Now it's like 10 years ago almost. Back like Dave Wanstead and before, you would spend all of December and January on the road conducting these in-home visits, so you could land a few more guys at the end of your class and hold on to all of the guys in your class and sign them all in February. They created the December signing day, that one on the third Wednesday of December, and now it was, you finished the regular season, you had a mad dash over 2 or 3 weeks to go out and see all of your commits and make sure they are solid and keep those guys locked in. Go try and land a couple new guys that you can all sign on that first or that third Wednesday in December. Now, this new signing day cuts out a lot of that. Because I don't think they're going to make a new contact period. Contact period is when you can go visit recruits off campus. I don't think they're going to make a new contact period leading up to that Wednesday before the conference championship games, because a contact period the week before that would be during the regular season, and no coaches are going on the road to visit their recruits in their homes when they're getting ready for the final game of the regular season. So you're eliminating that. You're eliminating those in-home visits. You're eliminating potential December official visits where you could add a few guys to your class, like 2023 recruiting class. Ty Diefenbach and Izzy Polk and TJ Harvison all took their visits and committed in December. Well, so they can enroll in January. Well, that option's not out there anymore for guys like that. Guys, if you're not committed in the fall of your senior season and you want to enroll in January and you haven't taken any official visits yet, your options are going to be pretty limited. Because schools often don't like to use official visits during the season. They just feel like they're so tied up on game day and the night before the game and the day of the game that they can't give the recruits the full experience of the official visit where they really go about town and see everything on campus and everything like that. And so unless schools start doing more in-season official visits, guys like Ty Diefenbach or Izzy Polk or TJ Harvison aren't going to have those opportunities if they want to enroll in January. Now, if you don't plan to enroll until June, it's a different story. You can wait and sign in February, and it's no big deal. But Pitt had 9 freshmen enroll in January, not to mention transfers. We start talking about transfers. I'm going to assume that December will remain a contact period where coaches can go on the road and visit guys. And technically, transfers don't really need to sign, so coaches could go visit them in December, and then those guys could just enroll. And the truth of the matter is, like, recruits don't really need to sign. They just need to do their academic paperwork. Fill out all the financial aid packages and all that stuff. They don't actually need to sign their letter of intent. They could just go through the process of admission, and then enroll and show up on campus in January. But I think it's going to be interesting to see because it's going to change what December looks like. I think you could potentially end up with more guys signing in February. Obviously, if they want to enroll early, that's not going to be an option. But I think you could see more guys signing in February because they might go through their senior season and just be like, nah, I want to see what other options are out there. But they're going to miss the December signing period because it's before the conference championship game, which means they're going to have to wait until February. So it's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what this all looks like. We'll ask Pat Narduzzi about this today. I think we're going to get a chance to talk to Pat Narduzzi. And if we do, we'll ask him about this new signing period when we talk to him today. Pitt is number 1, says, if and when we get down to 2 super conferences, do you think revenues will be shared equally? Shared based on winning or distributed based on TV ratings or a combination of the 3? I don't think they're going to be... Like, my first thought is they won't be shared equally. Yeah, like, you've got 2 conferences who have done everything they can to make the sport as unequal as possible, right? They're not going to bring in another 20 teams and share everything equally. I don't know what the weighted system will be. I don't think you want to go with on-field success. Like, if you're smart, you don't go with that because that's pretty fickle. I think you might want to go with TV performance, like ratings and things like that. Or just say screw it and, all the old SEC and Big Ten teams get this much. Everybody who's joining from the ACC and Big 12, you get this much. Because what are they going to do? If Pitt or Georgia Tech or Oklahoma State is like, no, man, come on. We need more than that. We should be getting closer to an equal share. All you have to do is be like, fine. Go join the Mountain West. Go join the AAC. Go join the Big East. And you'll get your equal share there. If you want to play in our conference, if you want to sit at our table, you're going to take what we're going to give you. Because nobody's going to say no to the SEC and the Big Ten. Let's see. Jay Leisinger says, I know we haven't seen any real recruiting pivot yet, but given how small the defensive line is, do you think we are going away from the stop the run, attack with smaller, quicker players strategy? I don't know. I mean, like, I think Charlie Partridge recruited a certain type of guy that he really liked. The defensive line is full of those guys right now. They have a lot of smaller, quicker, more athletic defensive tackles. Their defensive ends aren't all that big either. I don't know what Tim Doust is going to recruit. I think he wants to be able to attack. I think he wants defensive ends who can get off the edge and get into the backfield. And I think he wants some playmaking defensive tackles while understanding that those guys are a little hard to come by. I know Pitt has had 2 first-round draft picks at defensive tackle in the last 10 years, but that's tough to do. Those guys are tough to find, tough to recruit, and I think they're becoming tougher and tougher because of the success of guys like Aaron Donald, where coaches are saying, hey, you know what? I can actually win a lot. I can get a lot of penetration with this smaller defensive tackle. And so we haven't seen a pivot, I don't think, because I don't think we have a real sense of how Tim Doust is going to recruit the defensive line. So that'll be interesting. I would say over the next 2 years. So they sign a bunch of guys who are 320 pounds. Could be a complete change. Or do we see them going with smaller and quicker and more athletic tackles? I mean, if it was me, I would probably go the smaller side. Not go for the bigger guys who can't move, but go for the smaller guys who can be quick, who can be fast, who might not win with strength as much, but they can win with speed and quickness. That might be what I would do, but we'll see what Tim Doust likes. That's still kind of coming together. And the recruiting visitors this week were all wide receivers and tight ends and defensive backs. So, and a quarterback. So we haven't really seen who Tim Doust is trying to bring to campus just yet. But we'll be keeping an eye on it because, like a lot of positions, I think that's one that could be interesting going forward with how they recruit and who they try to go after. All right, those are all the questions today. Great questions. I appreciate everybody who chimed in the mailbag thread. If you want to be a part of the Morning Pitt Mailbag next Friday, just go on the message board between Fifth and Forbes, look for the mailbag thread, throw some questions in there, and we'll answer as many as we can on the Morning Pitt Mailbag. While you're here, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And, of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. For all the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle. Thanks for tuning in today. Appreciate you tuning in all week. It's been a lot of fun. Pitt closes the regular season against NC State tomorrow night. And then next week we will have, of course, Morning Pitt episodes, but we'll also have live post-game shows after the ACC tournament games. So be sure to tune in for all of that. Like and subscribe and check out Panther-Lair.com. And, yeah, thanks again. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up with you on Monday morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.